Alrighty, what's up guys, welcome back to another video on the channel, and today I'm going to be doing a tier list of all the Skylanders figures from Imaginators. These are all the Sensei figures. I'm doing it based on how cool the figure actually looks, and so I'm not going to be doing any of the variants because I already did a variant tier list, but this is basically just how cool I think the poses and the size and the actual look of the Skylander on the figure. Also, one more thing before I begin the video, I do want to say that I do have channel memberships now, so if you guys want to join support me, they do have some pretty cool benefits. We have two tiers, Light Cores and Senseis, which are pretty cool, and if you join the Senseis tier, you will get early access to every single one of my videos other than lock episodes, obviously, but you will get them right when I upload them, right when they're pre-recorded, which is usually like days if not weeks in advance. So it is pretty cool. If you guys are interested, feel free to join. Alright, so let's get right into this. Starting off, obviously, I'm doing this just on how cool the figure looks. And Airstrike, honestly, I think it looks pretty cool. I think having the bird on his hand actually adds a really cool touch. And he's the only figure, I think, in Skylanders that has like two different characters on one figure. And the bird is super big and actually looks really cool. Now, for Ambush, this guy's figure actually looks really sick. I really like how he has the sword like behind his back. I think that adds actually a really cool touch to the figure. And the overall colors just kind of pop at you. And I actually do like this figure. Now, Aurora, I think the pose is pretty cool, but the colors just don't really do it for me. It's not really bright enough or pops at you enough, which I honestly think is kind of sad considering she's a light Skylander. I feel like that's the type of Skylander that should be popping out at you. She just doesn't for me, but the pose is pretty cool with the swords. Now, next up is Bad Juju. I actually really like this figure. I think the colors are very enticing, as well as the gold accents on her armor make her someone that you really like want to play as when you see her. Bad Juju is a super enticing Skylander to me, and the transparent or translucent blades I think are really cool. Now, Barbella also has a pretty dang cool figure. I think the figure is a lot cooler than the actual Skylander, just because I think the actual design isn't the best, but the figure is really cool. I think it's kind of cool that she's got almost a translucent, like earthy body, and then she's got the big bar in the back that has the weights. It looks really cool, and I really like the pose that she's got it in. Now, Blastertron is an absolutely fantastic figure. I think the colors pop perfectly on this guy, and the mix of the pink and the purple looks absolutely amazing to me, and I think this figure is just amazing to look at, and I'm super happy I have him. Now, Boom Bloom is another one. This is definitely an S tier for me. Other than the issue where her base has the element instead of the battle class, which is inconsistent with all the other Senseis for some reason. Not sure why it's like that. The colors are amazing, and the pose is really cool, and her weapon looks absolutely sick wrapped around the whole figure, and it just looks awesome overall, and her design works really well on a figure. Now, next up is Buckshot. This is definitely an A tier for me. The way his bow and arrow looks, I think it looks really nice. I actually really like it with the golden bow and then the translucent purple arrow. I think it looks really cool, and I actually really like how this guy looks. I feel like his moveset didn't quite live up to how cool his figure actually looks. Now, there are some variants. We're not going to be doing variants, but now we got Chain Reaction. This guy's figure is probably going to be an A tier for me. This might be unpopular. I feel like a lot of people put this in S, but his design just isn't enticing enough for me to actually put it in S, although it's really cool, and I think it's got some really like insane detail to the beard with the chains. I can't quite put it higher than A just because the pose is a little bit bland with him just holding his swords out to the side, but I think it still looks pretty cool. Now, Chompy Mage, I actually love this guy's figure. I think this is an S tier figure. Just seeing this figure looks absolutely amazing. It's got some decent size to it. I like the size of this figure. I think it's really cool looking. And the colors between the staff and the Chompy puppet and the Chompy Mage himself, I think work really well with these slight accents of red. And then you've got the green all around, which looks really nice. And the staff is really cool looking. Now, next up, we do got Chopscotch, which I think this is a B tier for me. While the design is great and it is pretty cool, she's just really short and doesn't quite fit with the other Senseis when you look at her, and the colors don't really pop. They don't stick out. They don't look super enticing, so I might have to stick her in B tier for that, although she isn't really that bad. Now, next up is Crash Bandicoot. This is probably another B tier. He doesn't do anything to stand out. He just looks like a Crash Bandicoot figure, which isn't bad. It isn't a bad thing that he just looks kind of like Crash Bandicoot, but I feel like they could have done something more with this design other than him just sort of pointing at you. It looks kind of cool, but kind of goofy at the same time. Next up, we do got a few darks, which I'm going to move to the back because we're not doing those. Now we got Dr. Crankcase. I think this is an A tier. This looks absolutely beautiful, this figure. I think between the 5 legs are looking very natural, and they look like he would actually walk like that. And then he has one, blaster pointed out and one kind of behind him. Looks really good. And the way the hat and the colors contrast between the sort of red jacket and the red hat, and then the green on his face and his blasters looks really nice. I really like the coloring. Now, Neocortex, I think is a C tier. I do not think this guy's looks really, I don't think his figure looks good at all. It doesn't help that his design isn't that enticing to begin with, but his figure is just not doing it for me. He's just kind of standing there looking up, looking kind of weird, and the shape and the proportion and the size just doesn't work. He doesn't stand out, especially compared to some of these other senseis, so he's going to have to be C tier for me. Now with Ember, I think this is a B tier. I think they could have done something a little bit cooler, but again, the figure isn't bad. I like how the figure looks. I think it's a decent stance with her holding out her weapon like that. It looks pretty dang cool. But overall, like, I feel like they could have done something a little bit more with this figure. I feel like there should be more fire or something, but it is still a cool figure, which I like looking at. It also doesn't help that the sword or the blade is prone to like bending a lot. I don't really like that. Now next up is Flare Wolf. I think this guy has an A tier figure. This guy's figure is really cool to look at. I love the accents of fire coming out from his tail, on his head, and on the bazooka. That's what I wish we got more from Ember. This guy, the fire really stands out, and I really like seeing it. And I think the overall fox design there, or the wolf design, my bad, they went with this guy, looks really cool. And the massive golden bazooka with the red missile tip at the end of it looks really, really cool. Now for Golden Queen, I think this is a solid B tier. There isn't anything particularly wrong with this. It just doesn't stand out that much. Being all gold isn't a bad thing, but it isn't necessarily a good thing either. The pose is pretty cool, but pretty generic at the same time. It is a big figure though, and gold kind of stands out, which is pretty nice. The staff looks really good. Overall, it's a good looking figure, but it isn't anything too special, and they didn't make her look more menacing, which I feel like they should have done with more of the villains. So B tier is where it's going to land for me. Now for Graveclaw, this might be unpopular. I'm putting him in B tier too. I think he looks decent, but they could have done so much more with this pose. Just having his arms up like this, like, I really don't get the point of that. It doesn't look that cool. If he actually looked like he was in some sort of action pose, I think that would have looked a lot better overall, and it would have made him a much more enticing character. He doesn't really look like a villain. He just looks like a goofy guy, which I don't really like. Next up is Hoodsicle. This guy's, the design and like texture of his figure is crazy good. Like, it is crazy high quality, and it does not look like that at all in game, which is kind of sad. But this guy's figure is really cool, and with his double-sided scythe, it's absolutely awesome to see that. It's a very menacing weapon. He's got a very menacing design. You could tell he's a villain when you look at him. I think Hoodsicle pretty much nails what you want to see out of a villain sensei figure. So honestly, he's an A tier for me. Looks really cool, decent size, decent pose, decent everything. His weapon looks really nice too. Next up is Kingpin. I think it's going to be another A tier for me. I think the pose is actually really good. Like, I do really like the pose that they went with for Kingpin, which is definitely nice to see. The brawler weapons that he has are actually pretty dang cool, and the overall penguin design I think is a pretty cool design for Kingpin. I think it was a great starter pack Skylander. It's got a decent size overall, and it just looks cool, and you could tell this guy's like the leader of the senseis, which is pretty cool. Next up is Mysticat. I think this is another A tier figure. I think the staff and his overall sort of the clothing that he's wearing with the gold and the black really contrasts nicely with the purple that he's got on his overall design. I think it looks really cool, and then the staff obviously looks really cool. This guy is also, I mean, he's like a centaur, I guess, but like a cat. He's a cat with sort of like a human upper torso. He looks pretty cool overall, and I think the figure really works with this guy. Next up is Pinata. This should be no surprise. Easy S tier figure. The texture and color and like gradient of shifting colors on this figure is absolutely amazing. The lollipop looks super cool. The spikes down the back are an amazing touch, and just the face overall, like, it looks amazing. And the texture, like, this guy looks and feels like an actual pinata. It is super crazy to see a figure this high quality, and I absolutely love it for that. Next up is Pit Boss. For me, this is another S tier. This figure is absolutely amazing to me. Like, I really like how Pit Boss' figure looks with his big staff out in the open. That's like the main thing you're going to see. That's what you're going to be looking at, as well as the colors just work really well with him. The gold black with the mixed in sort of like dark green accents look really nice on this Pit Boss, which I can really appreciate. Next up is going to be Robo. This is another S tier for me. Robo looks absolutely amazing. I think this is one of the coolest Skylanders figures out there for sure, like, without a doubt. This is one of the coolest looking figures, and that's really, like, yeah, it's really no debate for me. I think the mix of the green and the blue and the black on the actual Skylander, and then the gold and the red on the bow looks absolutely amazing, and he just looks super cool in anyone's collection. Next up is Starcast. This is going to be another S for me. Having 4 arms with 4 stars looks super sick, not to mention the like cosmic translucent design that you see with this guy's figure. I absolutely love it. Like, I don't see how you couldn't love this figure. It looks absolutely amazing. So this is going to be an easy S tier for me. I think it looks super cool. Next up is Taekwon Crow. Honestly, this figure I'm gonna give a B. I feel like they could have done more with it. It just doesn't look that fiery at all. There's really no fire going on with this figure, and he's just kind of holding his shuriken to the side. Again, it doesn't look bad. It just doesn't do anything to stand out that well, which is gonna land in B tier. And pretty much the same story is gonna go for Tidepool. The pose on this one's definitely a little better, but there's nothing really showing off the water element. But I mean, the design does look pretty cool, and it's a pretty unique and interesting pose overall. But I don't know. There's something about it that just doesn't work, and I feel like they could have done something cooler overall with Tidepool's design, which is gonna get her in B tier. Now for Tri-Tip, I also think this is another B tier. There's nothing too bad about this. It's just kind of there, like it's not too special of a design. It doesn't look too super enticing on the figure. The mace looks really cool. It looks really nice and clean, but they could have put him in a better pose. He's just kind of standing there holding the mace behind him, and he's just got a big old smile on his face, which doesn't really help if you're trying to make him look menacing whatsoever. Now next up, we got Wildstorm. There should be no surprises, an S here. I mean, this figure looks amazing. This is like top notch with the colors and the size and the massive golden and blue sword. It looks absolutely awesome. I love looking at this figure. One of my favorites for sure. And just the armor overall mixed with the blue colors and the actual facial design is one of the coolest we see out of any of the senseis. Now last up is Wolfgang. I think this is a B tier. It just isn't done nearly as well as Buckshot. I think Buckshot's bowslinger pose is just a little bit better. It's just more fluent looking than Wolfgang's. Wolfgang's does have the strings on the guitar, which looks kind of cool, but I don't know. Something's off. He's just kind of standing there, and he looks really wonky, like shaped. But it is still like a cool figure. I still like the figure, but I think it's just a B tier overall because it isn't anything special like these ones up here. So with that being said, I do thank you guys for watching this video. I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, until then, see you later, guys.